My mother always made me play hide and seek with her. It was just her and me, and we played at 9. Each time, without failure, she told me to ignore her during the game. She told me that she would purposefully try to trick me, but, you know, if you really wanted to trick somebody, why tell them anything? We played in the park. I thought this was normal. I knew other families didn't do this, but at the same time, I thought there was nothing wrong with us doing it. I liked the park after all. During the night, the air was so fresh and it was silent and the trees seemed larger than usual. She counted down from 100, giving me ample time to run away. My general competitiveness always made me run away and as far away as I could. I'd find some space behind many trees, and I'd lie down. The park was large, but somehow my mother would always manage to walk past me at least 3 times in those 20 minutes. I'd always hear her speaking as she walked past me. "Come out, Clara. Clara, please come out. I'm sick of this stupid game, Clara. It's cold, and I just want to go home." I ignored her. When we first started with the games, I'd been foolish enough to leave my hiding spot. My mother's face immediately turned into one of fury. She'd walk up and grab me tightly by the shoulder as she scolded me relentlessly. "I told you not to listen to me, didn't I?" She would drag me back to the car and ignore me until the next day when we played. I didn't know why she did it. After I'd stopped listening to her during the 20 minutes of game time, it would no longer trick me. I knew she was lying, and it simply seemed like a waste of breath and energy to keep calling out for me. She got angry when she found me too. The park was a huge place, and if she hid somewhere, I would never find her. But somehow my mother was excellent at tracking me down. It was like she sniffed me and hunted me down. Instead of getting angry at me, she got disappointed. She'd sigh loudly, and her eyes would tear up before she'd dejectedly walk to the car. That gave me the worst feeling ever, filling me with inadequacy. One time she found me after only 2 minutes, and she broke down sobbing. I didn't get it. I felt a huge urge to win. I needed it, so I started to get creative. I hid myself in the bushes. I changed my clothing to be more green and black and generally more inconspicuous. I got high up in trees so it would be difficult to see me from the ground. I learned how to stay still, really, really still. And when I won, my mother would give me a smile. It wasn't a smile of happiness or a smile of pleasure. It was more a relieved smile, but I felt so proud when I saw it. We'd go home, and I'd have an easy time falling asleep. Then my father came. One day when I came back from school, I saw him talking to my mother. He was almost never home, actually. I'd seen him twice in my entire life, and my mother never really spoke about him. He was really just a stranger to me. I noticed the expression on my mother's face immediately. It was pale, white, shaking, eyes wide. I couldn't hear what he was saying, so I got closer in towards them. Of course, their conversation stopped just as I did it. Well, my father stopped speaking. The expression on my mother stayed the same. He turned to me and smiled in a wolfish way. It made me recoil away with disgust. He sneered. He fucking sneered. I thought it was normal. That was how my classmates acted after all. Later that same day, when my father was off in the toilet, my mother got close to me and whispered, "Don't come out." Not even after 20 minutes, my father got really energetic right before bedtime. I thought we'd skip the whole hide-and-seek thing. My mom looked really sick, and looking at the clock, she said, "Let's take a trip to the park." I immediately noticed that she didn't mention hide-and-seek. "Why?" my father asked. "Why not? Get some fresh air, maybe." "Fine," he said. "I like 'em active anyway." What the hell did he mean by that? Mom told me to change with a certain look, and I caught what she meant immediately. Put on hiding clothes. After doing it, we got into the car and we drove to the park. My mother was silent the entire way, but my father hummed. We walked together in the park for a while, my dad mumbling about work. I don't remember much of it. Honestly, it didn't sound like any job I'd ever heard. Then suddenly my mother pointed at a tree in the distance. I noticed that it was the same tree she'd found me hiding behind the last time she'd caught me. "These trees get so old, then they die. It's a shame they're stuck in place, unable to get away from the virus." She was saying, "Get away and hide. Death is the way of all living things," Dad said. "No need to fear it." "I think I saw a squirrel in that tree," I said. "I'm going to go check it out." I disappeared into the forest I'd grown well acquainted to. I got behind a hill before changing direction and moving away. I made sure to try to move on the spots that wouldn't leave a mark. I needed to get far away before they noticed something was up. I thought about climbing a tree and hiding there, or about diving into a couple of bushes. Trees were only effective if people didn't check. Bushes worked great, but you'd have a small if no view of your surroundings. I chose the bushes, jumping into them and trying to control my breath. After a couple of minutes, I heard my parents walking in the distance. "Clara!" Dad shouted. "Where are you, sweetheart? If you're hurt, please say something and we'll help." "Clara!" Mother said. "Clara, can you hear me, darling?" My heart beat faster. I knew for a fact that I shouldn't leave the bushes. That was the absolute worst thing that could happen. I kept me breathing under check as they moved further and further away from me. Then they came back. "Please, Clara, your dad isn't dangerous. Please come out." "Clara, please, I need to get going soon. Please come out." "Clara," Mom said, "where are you?" "Stop this silly nonsense," Dad said. Their voices eventually faded out. I stayed there, in the same position, for nearly a whole hour. My body started to ache, and I could feel insect crawling around on the back of my leg. I really wanted to leave this position. I heard a stick snap in the distance. It came from behind me. I hadn't heard their voices at all had they just stopped speaking. That terrified me, and I felt I needed to turn around and get a view. But I knew that would give me away. "Clara, stop with this silly nonsense. Come out." I was entirely silent. "Clara, please come out." Her voice was turning more and more desperate, more guttural. Fortunately, it was what seemed to be around 70 meters away from me, but she was approaching. "Clara," Mom said, "I'm getting tired. I just want to go home, eat, and sleep." I stayed silent as the voice grew louder. She was approaching me. "I know you're in the area. It's only a moment of time before I find you. I will skin you, haha. I'll start with your forearms, peeling off your skin with a dull knife, just like peeling back cheese. I wager there'll be lots of blood coming out, and screaming. I won't be able to focus, but that's all right. I can always switch to your other arm." She came closer. "You won't like it. I certainly wouldn't, but I'm not as stupid and fucking disgusting as you are, Clara. No. I'm glad I'm not a creature of filth like you. The only good you can serve is by being in my belly, by fueling me. I'll find you." The voice was only 20 meters away. "You'll regret not coming out." 10 meters. "You know, I don't eat the bones. They get stuck in my throat, but I can't leave them. I'll probably take them home with me and suck on them. They have a good taste, you know. It'll be perfect." 2 meters, she giggled. Did she find me? Oh no. I debated whether I should stay still and hope for the best or if I should look back. My fear was killing me, and it had to know, but I know looking would make noise. No, I had to stay still. "I know where you are," she said. Fuck. But then, she began walking away from my spot. "I'll suck on your eyeballs before swallowing them. They're better whole, and they're always wet and squishy, so they go down the throat easily. If not, there's always blood. Oh, a mouthful of warm blood. Is there a better feeling?" I stayed still for that entire night, even after I was certain that they'd gone away. It was only when the sun was above me, and I could hear other children, that I stood up. One child jumped back and shrieked. He must have gotten properly terrified. Then I made my way back home. Dad wasn't there, but Mom was. She hugged me. I convinced my wife she only had a few weeks to live. She didn't react the way I expected. "Okay, so before you go calling me a complete asshole, you should know my wife, Stacy, has pulled some seriously fucked up pranks in the past. Like last August, after my mom got hit by that 18-wheeler, she secretly signed up for ventriloquism lessons so that during the funeral, she could throw her voice and yell, 'Get me out of here! I'm still alive, damn it!' while the pallbearers lowered the casket. Or there was the time she tricked me into thinking I'd won the lottery. That alone I might have laughed off, except she also convinced me to call my very married asshole boss and tell him the whole department knows he fucked his secretary at the office Christmas party. So I'd been looking for a little payback, you might say. Just last week, Stacy came down with a ferocious migraine, and 3 days in bed with a damp rag across her head didn't help one bit, so off to the hospital we went. From across the desk in his cramped office, Dr. Mercer said she needed a brain scan.
He also suggested that, in his professional opinion, we should brace ourselves for the worst. Time slowed down while we waited for the diagnosis. Adrift and forlorn, we held each other for hours on end while the seconds ticked by on the clock above the mantelpiece. Oh sure, my beloved kept a brave face, but anytime she returned from her solo walks, her eyes would be all red and puffed out. Well, this morning, Dr. Mercer finally called while Stacy was at the store. He used the landline because she hadn't answered her mobile. "So, what's the diagnosis?" I asked, my stomach folding itself in knots. Again and again he insisted he couldn't discuss the case with anyone besides the patient, although 10 minutes of groveling wore him down. He sighed, lowered his voice, then said he had a hunch Stacy and I would have cause for celebration this Valentine's Day. All joy seeped back into the world. I thanked the doc a million times before collapsing into the chair, an idea for a prank already blooming in my mind, and boy was it a doozy. At the lounge table, I rubbed my eyes until they turned all bloodshot, and then practiced my sullen face. Soon I heard little Miss Loves to Prank come through the front door, kick off her shoes, and shuffle along the hall. As she stepped into the room, I looked up without saying a single word. A hand shot up over her mouth. I swallowed a gulp. Then, in a thin, weak voice, I said, "Dr. Mercer called. Is it bad?" Rather than answer, I simply pretended to sob into my hands. Stacy didn't burst into tears or scream, nor did she collapse on the floor. Instead, she let out a deep sigh and threw her head back. On the wall beside the window stood a dark wooden cabinet. She went over to it, slid open the bottom drawer, and lifted out this huge metal trunk. I stood up. "Everything okay?" The trunk had a combination lock. Once Stacy rolled the numbers into place, the latch opened with a little click. "Do you love me?" she asked over her shoulder. Still in character, I said, "Of course I love you. I'll always love you. And we're gonna get... Then drink this." She spun around, holding out a whiskey bottle. I craned my neck to peek inside the trunk and glimpsed a pair of handcuffs and a red bow tie before she blocked my view. "I bought it for a special occasion," she said. I stepped forward, arms outstretched. "Listen, no matter what we're gonna get through this mess together, just drink it," she snapped. "Please, it's important. If you love me, you'll drink it." Was this a joke? I searched her face for answers, finding none. But hell, who was I to judge? Everybody processes grief in their own individual way. "Sure, honey." I grabbed the bottle from her and took a long swig, my insides already warming. 5 seconds later, the floor rose up to meet me. Darkness swallowed the lounge and everything in it. My next memory is of the words, "I love you," drifting toward me from the end of a long tunnel. There was pressure inside my skull. I tried moving, couldn't. My hands had been cuffed behind my back, and my ankles were bound together by a length of rope. I was propped up on the sofa in a tux. Through the haze, I saw two Stacys orbit one another, both wearing her favorite dress, that red off-the-shoulder number. In her right hand, she had a pistol. Where did that come from? Her voice echoed on and on as she told me she'd prepared for this day years ago, that she couldn't bear the thought of me carrying on without her and starting a new family. Although I dipped in and out of consciousness, the words, "We have to go together," kept stinging my ears. I thrashed around, unable to speak. The best my drooling mouth could manage was slurred, random syllables. Stacy sat beside me and pressed her right temple against my left. The pistol angled in such a way one shot would tear through both our frontal lobe. Oh, fuck. Did she plan on killing us? My attempts to beg her to wait came out as a nonsensical gurgle. Squeezing those beautiful green eyes of hers shut, Stacy said, "Goodbye, Frank. I love you so much." By now, enough of the brain fog had lifted that I could mutter, "It was a prank." She stopped breathing, tensed up. "What?" I took several quick, short breaths. "It's a prank. Dr. Mercer said you'll be fine, so I set you up, as payback for the lottery thing." For almost a minute, neither of us said a word, the room thick with tension. Then, forcing a smile, she said, "Well, duh." She stood. "Did you really think I was gonna kill us both? I knew you were full of crap the second I walked in. You're the worst actor in the world. I just turned the prank around on you. Ha ha ha!" The way she said this, every word steeped in sincerity, made the statement swing all the way back towards Hollow. She crossed the room and slipped the gun into the trunk before returning with a key to unlock my cuffs. "Well,
That's a relief about the diagnosis. We should celebrate. How about we order Thai tonight? After she loosened the rope, I got up, rubbing my chafed wrists, my vision blurred and my throat dry. Sounds great. Perfect. With that, she smiled, stood on her tiptoes, lifted my chin with a finger, gave me a quick kiss, and then disappeared into the kitchen. My shirt was a drenched rag against my chest. Had it really been a prank? Surely drugging me was a step. Too far, even for her. Just then, the phone wailed. It sounded painfully loud inside my aching skull. Dr. Mercer was on the line, and this time, his voice carried a distinct sour note. "Frank, I'm really sorry, but there's been a mix-up with the results. Can you have Stacy call me as soon as possible? It's urgent." The room tilted from side to side, the ground shifting beneath my feet. My better half came back through the door and said, "Who was that, honey?" I hung up and swallowed the lump in my throat. Wrong number. Have you noticed that this forum's engagement has been dropping over the years? It's only a slight downward slope, almost imperceptible. It's not that Redditors have been engaging any less frequently with the subreddit. It's simply that there are fewer members alive, and I just found out why. The moderators have been eating them. I don't know how many of you will have a chance to read this post. A few hundred, a few thousand. Likeliest scenario, the mods denounce me as a liar and swiftly delete this evidence. They wouldn't stop there. I can already picture hungering eyes poring over every word I've typed. In fact, I think what scares me most is that the moderators probably won't delete this. Nobody can stop them. They'll maliciously grin at the screen, preparing for their next meal. I already know that they're coming for me. On Friday evening, I received a horrifying document from my friend on Reddit. Let's call him Joe. He said that he'd received the document from a once prolific poster on this subreddit. I won't name the user. I've messaged the aforementioned user repeatedly, but there's been no response. The document included a list of Reddit usernames, and there was a message at the top. The moderators aren't human. Your time has come when you receive the purple notification. I snapped my neck around to face the open bedroom door behind me. I live alone, and my hauntingly hollow house often plays tricks on me, but I know what I saw. In the reflection of a pitch-black segment on my screen, I caught a ghastly glimpse of a twig-like man on the unlit landing. He had been standing in my doorway and watching me. His form flitted from view before I had the chance to look directly at him. Ping. On my desktop monitor, there was a new Reddit notification. The message came from the No Sleep moderators, but the username wasn't green. It was purple. As if that weren't horrifying enough, the message read, "No sleep fear tastes so sweet. Your haunted brain is what I'll eat." A melodic humming sound echoed around the vast nothingness of my grand, cavernous home, the twisted tune of whatever was watching me. Body twitching, I tried to suppress my fear and compose myself. I wanted to believe Joe had orchestrated the masterful prank, even though I knew he was far too serious a fellow for anything like that. I messaged him, seeking reassurance that nothing untoward had occurred. He replied, "Are you shitting me? Come over to my place." I just received the same message. I don't know whether we've been hacked by someone, but it's given me the heebie-jeebies. The last thing I wanted to do was venture to my friend's house at 1:45, but I was far too frightened to stay in my house of horrors. Besides, Joe only lived a few minutes away on foot. Not that a pitch-black walk really appealed to me either. Shadows danced along the walls of every alleyway I passed. Anyone else, in an ordinary circumstance, would have chalked that up to trickery of the light. But I know it was the same insidious, inhuman figure that I saw on the upstairs landing of my house. It was following me. I hurried to Joe's apartment building and frantically hammered the buzzer. He didn't respond. After ringing desperately for several minutes, somebody finally appeared in the lobby and opened the door for me. "Hi, Paul. Are you here to see Joe?" Mrs. Callender asked. I hurriedly nodded my head and slid past her, sprinting up the stairs to apartment 11. Joe hadn't answered his buzzer or my numerous phone calls, so I was fully prepared to kick down his door. No need. It was ajar. Lightly pushing it open, I gazed into my friend's dark, eerily still flat. As I tiptoed inside, I breathlessly observed my surroundings. I didn't want to announce my presence. Joe wasn't a prankster, and if he were, he still wouldn't have done something so elaborate. I knew it wasn't a game. Then, I heard a looping hum, that same melodic medley from my house, a foreboding arpeggio. There was a squelching sound from within the kitchen. My head told me to run, but my legs were guided by some external force. I was unable to resist the siren song. What I witnessed in that room fundamentally broke me as a person. Joe lay on the kitchen table, sprawled out like a slaughtered starfish, and he had been scalped with maliciously meticulous precision. Above him, a shapeless shadow munched merrily on the gray matter sitting in his fractured skull. The inhuman Reddit moderator was devouring his haunted brain, as it had promised. Horrifyingly, Joe was still alive, his teary eyes locked onto mine whilst his limbs were seizing. "Flesh in the Grape Tower," he stuttered, losing his brain function. "Yes, 11 times. The shadow had no discernible form, but I know its shadowy head turned to face me. It developed an opening that vaguely resembled a crooked smile. I wailed internally, too stunned to speak, and fled the kitchen. The thing pursued me. I didn't have to turn around to verify that. I bounded upstairs and barricaded myself in the upstairs bathroom. That's where I've been hiding for the past day. I can't stop thinking about Joe. I'm plagued by the horrific sight of him lying there, losing his brain piece by piece. How does it feel to lose one's brain so slowly? I don't want to imagine. Perhaps I'll die of thirst before the shadow breaks inside. I hope so. Just heed my warning and leave this subreddit before it's too late.